When you're standing on the dock with a freshwater boat, the biggest decision isn't which lure to cast, but whether the motor you're about to add will actually make your day easier or just add another layer of hassle. I've spent the last few weeks watching anglers set up, run, and tweak the same bow mount system, and I want to walk through the practical bits that matter most before you click buy. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The goal here is to let you weigh the real-world value against the price tag, so you can avoid the classic buyer's regret of buying the wrong trolling motor for your specific fishing style. First off, let's talk about how the Terrova actually gets on the water. The system uses a pair of fall-away ramps that slide out from the hull and lock into place without requiring you to crane the motor up and down each time you launch. In my tests on a 14-foot aluminum base boat, the ramps deployed in under a minute, and the motor settled snugly against the transom. That speed of setup is a real benefit if you're the kind of angler who likes to be on the water at first light and doesn't want to waste 30 minutes wrestling with a traditional mount. The downside is the ramp mechanism adds a few extra pounds to the bow, which can affect trim on very light boats. If you're on a 12-foot skiff that's already close to its maximum payload, you might notice a slight dip in the stern when the motor is running at full thrust. The motor itself pushes 112 pounds of thrust, which is comfortably in the sweet spot for most freshwater boats under 20 feet. On calm lakes, I could hold a steady 5-knot speed with just a quarter of the throttle, leaving plenty of headroom for wind or a sudden current. In a test on a windy day on a 16-foot pontoon, the full 112 pounds thrust kept the boat moving forward without the motor stalling, something I've seen lower thrust models struggle with. The practical strength here is the confidence you get knowing you won't lose control when you finally locate a school of fish and need to maneuver quickly. On the flip side, that level of thrust means the battery draws more power, so you'll need a sizable deep cycle battery if you plan on staying out for 8 hours or more. A 100 amp-hour battery gave me roughly 6 hours of steady cruising before the voltage began to dip, which is fine for most day trips, but could be limiting for multi-day outings. What really sets the Terrova apart is the integrated universal sonar paired with the iPilot GPS. The sonar is mounted on the motor head, giving you a clear picture of what's directly ahead without having to add a separate fish finder. In practice, I could see bait fish structures within 10 feet of the bow and adjust my depth on the fly using the foot pedal. The GPS component lets you lock onto a spot, what Minn Kota calls spot lock, so you can return to a hot location even after drifting for a while. I tried this on a lake where the fish were scattered over a 200-yard stretch. After marking 3 productive spots, the motor automatically guided me back each time I pressed the spot lock button. That hands-free navigation saved a lot of guesswork, especially when you're juggling a live bait rig and need both hands on the rod. However, the sonar display is relatively small and can be hard to read in bright sunlight unless you tilt the motor head away from the glare. If you fish in consistently bright conditions, you may find yourself needing a separate, larger display to get the full benefit. The foot pedal is another element worth dissecting. Minn Kota offers 2 steering modes, a heel-toto sport position that lets you steer with subtle foot movements, and a traditional toe-only mode for those who prefer a more familiar feel. In my experience, the sport mode made fine adjustments around tight weed beds much smoother, letting me nudge the boat without taking a hand off the rod. That said, there's a learning curve. New users might feel a little wobbly at first, especially when trying to hold a steady speed while turning. If you've never used a foot-controlled motor, give yourself a day or 2 on a calm lake to get comfortable before heading to a busy fishing spot. Now, who should actually consider buying the Terrova? If you own a freshwater boat between 12 and 20 feet, fish regularly on lakes or slow-moving rivers, and value the combination of sonar and GPS in a single package, this motor checks a lot of boxes. It's especially attractive for anglers who like to drop down to the bottom quickly, run a tight line, and then hop back to a pre-marked spot without losing their bearings. The integrated sonar means you don't need an extra transducer, saving both money and wiring effort. For those who already own a separate high-end fish finder and are only after a motor, the built-in sonar may feel redundant, and you might prefer a simpler, less expensive,